It has to do, my cross-examination right now, I believe, is being limited by the court. This witness, and I've got specific language that I do want to read into the record, but in a nutshell, this witness has a bias. I am trying to cross that witness on that bias. Part of it is the investigative decisions that he made, and what I'm trying to introduce in is not being entered in for the truth of the matter asserted. It's things that he knew. For example, the phone call talking about purchase of vehicle. This witness has testified saying there's no evidence whatsoever that it was legitimately purchased. There is evidence. The government yesterday was allowed to enter in a phone call that had nothing to do with an alleged conspiracy, but instead was about tires on a Lexus. As well, and I believe that it's along the same lines, when they called Erica Johnson to the stand, when she testified inconsistently, they were allowed to play an entire phone call to the jury. I am doing the exact same thing that this witness has testified. There's no evidence of something when there is clear evidence from their own evidence. If Your Honor wants me, I can read this in now, or if Your Honor wants me to...
I don't know what you're talking about.
The state is confusing argumentative questions with effective cross-examination or impeachment. Crossing on investigative decisions goes to witness bias and or motive to lie. So statements going towards establishing that are not offered for the truth of what Ms. Magbanua is saying. It's being offered to show what the witness chose to ignore. All witnesses are subject to cross-examination for the purpose of discrediting them by showing bias, prejudice, or interest. This is especially so where a key state witness is being cross-examined. That comes from Jones v. State, 385 Southern 2nd, 132. It's a 4th DCA case from 1980. Another quote, this one comes from Levette v. State. That's Lavette v. State, 442 Southern 2nd, 265. That's a Florida 1st DCA case from 1983. Defense should be allowed wide latitude to demonstrate bias or possible motive for witness testimony. Your Honor, when I was asking questions of this agent, what he personally wanted, we have a recording of him saying, I want the people that I believe were involved in this. That's what I want. And he used the words, personally. I was trying to impeach him, trying to ask him first, and then was planning on impeaching him with that recording. The third topic that we had, the court is effectively limiting Ms. Magbanua's Sixth Amendment right to confront witnesses. That's coming from DC v. State, 400 Southern 2nd, 825. It's a 3rd DCA case from 1981. Quote, the right to confrontation under the 6th and 14th Amendments may in certain cases require an opportunity to develop issues of bias by cross-examination. All witnesses are subject to cross-examination for the purpose of discrediting them by bias, prejudice, or interest, especially where a key witness is being crossed. This is the lead agent.
I deal with each question as it comes up, do the best I can to make an appropriate ruling. If there is a conviction in the case, an appellate court will decide whether I was right or wrong. So that's where we stand on that. That's arguable. But what is not arguable, Mr. DeCoste, is you making comments in front of the jury. There is no excuse, there is no basis for you making personal comments in front of the jury. And we're not going to have any more of those. Do I understand? Do you understand me?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's have a jury, please.
Jury's in the courtroom.
Everybody be seated, please. May proceed.
Agent, before we broke, we were talking about my client's employment. At nightclubs during 2013, 14, and 15. And we were talking about how that related over to cash deposits. You remember that, right?
Correct.
Let's turn over to other sources. You know that Catherine Magbanua had how many children with Sigfredo Garcia?
2.
2 young children, right?
Correct.
Let's pull that check, please, Mr. DeCoste.
It's actually there so nobody walks over the cable. What? It's there so nobody walks over the cables, Your Honor.
No, on the screen. I'm talking about. Pull the check off the screen. Okay, thank you.
Okay. You don't know how he was helping provide for those children, do you?
Toward the end, he was working at Rapid Capital Funding, yes.
what you just said, I don't know if the jury heard it, Rapid Capital Funding, he was working at Rapid Capital Funding,
Yes.
receiving a paycheck?
Yes.
Prior to that, you don't know, right?
No, we had no evidence of what he was earning.
You were there for his arrest, right?
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, when you arrested him, he had $5,000 cash on him.
Correct.
Let's turn now to the bump. This took place south of 5th in Miami, right?
That's correct.
It was a big operation, right?
Compared to, sure, yeah, it was a big operation. Sure.
You had a pre-operation meeting at the Miami Beach Police Department.
That's correct.
You had personnel from the Miami Beach Police Department. You had agents flown in, right?
No, that's incorrect.
You only had local Miami agents?
That's correct.
You're
Except
not a
for the
Miami agent,
undercover.
are you?
I did not fly in. Myself and the undercover drove down. We're the only ones from out of town.
Drove. FBI pays for the gas, right?
Yes.
Pays for the car.
Yes.
For people to travel down to South Florida for this operation.
That's correct.
That costs money.
Yes.
There was also task force officers present, right?
I know of one or two.
Robert Lanier.
Yes.
And those are people that work in conjunction with the local police force and a federal agency. In this case, Federal Bureau of Investigation, right?
That's correct.
There was also a lot of video equipment that was brought, and it was filmed from multiple angles, right?
Correct.
And you were the lead of this operation, right?
That's correct.
Now, and I'm thinking it was probably somebody above you said, hey, we should have a high altitude plane flying overhead as well too.
That's correct.
Not a helicopter, not a small plane, a high altitude plane flying overhead doing additional video surveillance.
That's correct.
Not an inexpensive operation.
No.
Showing you it's been entered in as government 120. You know what that is, right?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
That's a copy of the flyer that the undercover provided to Mrs. Adelson.
Now, the only reason why we have a copy is because you don't have a copy of the original, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
That's correct.
It, quote, slipped our minds.
That's correct. And
Objection at the argument tonight.
Overruled.
that's correct. During the operation, I was responsible for getting everyone on the street, getting out there on time. We were debating on the amount to put on there, and I was talking on the phone to TPD, sending people out the door. We're trying to get out there before Miss Adelson crossed the street. And the last second, we wrote it down on the paper and ran out the door. And it was my mistake for not taking a picture of it.
You agree with me that you should have copied it.
Sure.
Didn't have to be done last minute, did it?
It did because we were debating on the amount.
That doesn't necessitate the need to do it at the last minute, does it?
That's what happened, is it happened at the last minute.
Could have done it at the pre-operational meeting.
This was a pre-operational meeting.
So you have a pre-operational meeting at the Miami Beach Police Department before all this happens, and nobody can take out a cell phone, snap a photo.
We could have, and like I said, slipped my mind because I'm worried about officer safety and getting everything on the street. But that was not our key piece of evidence that we were worried about at that time.
We have to take the FBI's word of what was written on the piece of paper that was handed to Don Adelson, right?
Along with the phone calls that substantiate what was written on it, correct?
Well, on none of those calls did we hear anybody say exactly what was written on it, did we?
No, but you can hear inferences of what was written on it.
So we're taking somebody else's opinion of what was on there as evidence of what was on there?
It's not an opinion when they're talking about the amount and the phone number. And that's what the key evidence was, is them calling back to that phone number.
Does that mean that they read the entirety of what was on there? Let me rephrase that because that was a little bit confusing for you. You're talking about how on the phone, Donna Adelson says 5,000, right?
Correct.
Does that mean that she was reading everything that was written on there?
Absolutely, because that was the only thing written on there besides the phone number.
Did she say anything about, there are definitely people that I continue to run into in Miami, people who ran into Dan? Did she say that over the phone?
No, we didn't handwrite that.
So she didn't say everything that was on the paper, all the words on the paper.
Correct.
Now, the activity and the purpose of this whole bump is you hand the paperwork to Don Adelson and you want to see what happens, right?
Correct. We want to see if that number, who that number goes back to and who it ends up with.
Correct. So
The phone tree.
And it goes from Donna Adelson to Charles Adelson to Catherine Magbanua to Sigfredo Garcia, right?
Correct.
But this was a controlled bump, right?
What do you mean by controlled?
Let me explain. They didn't just walk up and hand this piece of paper to Donna Adelson and see what happens, right?
That's pretty much what we did, yes.
No. Correct me if I'm wrong. The undercover said, your son, right?
Oh, yes, he had a conversation with her, yes.
Said the name Catherine twice.
Yes.
Said the name Tuto twice.
Correct.
So it was controlled. The information that was given was controlled, right?
The information that our agent gave them, we gave them specific information to give them, yes.
And that was the exact communication pattern. Donna calls her son going, hey, a guy just gave me a piece of paper, said you, said Catherine, said
That's
Tuto.
incorrect.
Let's
That's
talk
incorrect.
About it. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because you're talking about the fact that you don't know whether it was Catherine or ex-girlfriend, right? That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. That's exactly what she said.
Now, you don't have any WhatsApp communications between Donna Adelson and Charles Adelson, do you?
No, we don't.
But you know from the wiretaps that he uses it, don't you?
At some point later on, it seems he does, yes.
All right. Now, let's talk about his, the language was ex-girlfriend, right?
That Charlie told his mother that, yes, they said ex-girlfriend.
We're going to step aside for a second and we're going to talk about his relationships.
Okay.
Through your investigation, you meet with many people. One of them is June Umchinda, right?
Correct.
Now, when you met with her, she was his then girlfriend. Right?
That's incorrect.
She explains to you the series of girlfriends, right? How she was his girlfriend at one point, and
Yes.
before her there was a girl named Whitney.
Yes.
And before Whitney, there was Catherine.
Yes.
You knew that the relationship with Catherine was a long relationship, right?
Somewhat, yes.
And you believe that during that relationship that Catherine met one or all of the Adelsons. Well, obviously Charles because they're dating, but the other three of the Adelsons, right?
Sure. Yes.
You don't know the extent of the relationship with Whitney, right?
Yeah, I believe I do.
You have no evidence that she ever even met his parents.
We interviewed Whitney.
Your Honor, if we can go sidebar. Richard's in here. Agent, you remember when I took your deposition March 6, 2019, right?
Yes.
I went over every single action you've done, every single report. You remember that, right?
Yes.
And I asked you, is there anything that I'm leaving out? You remember that?
I do.
Never mentioned ever meeting with Whitney, did you?
I don't remember.
Do you want to take a look at it?
No, did you bring up did you ask me if I interviewed Whitney?
Do you remember when I asked you, is there anything that I'm leaving out?
And I said, as far as I can remember.
When did you meet with her?
I don't remember the dates. It was of course after the bump, after the arrest.
And who was present for this meeting?
Investigator Ison.
So this would have been before he retired. It would have been years ago.
Correct.
As you sit here, though, you have no idea of the extent of the relationship that Charles Adelson had with Whitney.
The extent of the relationship, I don't know what you mean by that.
Whether Donna Adelson would ever consider Whitney an ex-girlfriend, as opposed to a fling.
I believe Donna knew who Whitney was.
You don't know that for sure, though, do you?
I'd have to go back and review stuff. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head now.
So, June was post everything, so it couldn't have been June. You have the bump. So, again, this is 2016. The bump is going on. And during the time, around that time of the bump, He's with June?
Around the time of the bump?
Yeah.
I believe so.
All right, so it can't be June. She's not the ex-girlfriend. She's the current girl.
Okay,
Catherine is the ex-girlfriend, right?
sure. One of them.
So let's come back over to this. You have the bump, right?
Yes,
The communication then goes to Charles, right? Whatever the conversation in between him and Donna, whether it's on WhatsApp, whether it's the inferring, it's got to be Catherine because she's the ex-girlfriend. He then contacts the other person that the undercover named, Catherine, right?
correct.
Catherine gets the information from Charles, says the other name, and then she contacts the other person that was named, Tuto.
Correct.
Controlled growth, right?
Sure.
What would have been stronger evidence is if you had done this, correct me if I'm wrong, without giving any message whatsoever.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustain.
Let's go over to the wiretaps. The wiretaps, correct me if I'm wrong, are going on around the time of the bump. They start a little bit before and they continue about a month and a half after.
That's correct.
You get wiretaps on Catherine Magbanua and Charles Adelson, right?
Correct.
Not on Wendy Adelson,
No,
not on Don Adelson,
no,
not on Harvey Adelson,
no,
not on Jessica Rodriguez,
no,
not on Sigfredo Garcia.
no.
You had a plane, high altitude to film the handing of a piece of paper, but you don't get wiretaps on people that you believe are involved in the conspiracy, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustain.
You don't have any access to what, if any, WhatsApp messages were going on amongst anybody, right?
That's correct.
Now, WhatsApp, and you know what WhatsApp is, right?
Correct.
You can make phone calls through WhatsApp as well, too.
You can.
Coming back over to Apple, one could make a FaceTime call. No records of that, right?
Correct.
You wouldn't even know that any of these communications ever happened. Not only is there not a recording, there's no data saying, hey, on this date, these people spoke, right?
I think on the cell phones it actually shows a data transmission, if I'm not mistaken, but that's a Corbett question.
Sergeant Corbett,
Sergeant Corbett question, yes.
we'll ask him. Now, during these wiretaps, there's 359 some odd phone calls, right?
I guess.
You listened to them, right?
Not all of them.
There's over 2 months worth of recordings.
Yes.
Now, given the fact that Catherine Magbanua is one of the two people being wiretapped, it's a lot of her phone calls, right?
Yes.
Not once does she say anything about being involved in a murder. Not once.
No.
The whole purpose of these wiretaps is to secretly record people, to get their conversations, to see if there is evidence, right?
To get certain types of evidence. Sure.
And again, it's done in secret. It's not done putting these people on notice. Hey, we're listening to your every word, your every communication, your every thought. Right?
Correct.
Instead, yesterday we listened to conversations about TI and tattoos, right?
Among other things, yes.
Charles and Catherine communicating after the bump. That wasn't a regular, was it?
Wasn't what?
It wasn't out of the blue. It wasn't, hey, I haven't talked to you in a long time. I'm immediately going to call you because this bump just happened.
You said irregular, yes.
It wasn't irregular, right?
Correct.
The wiretap begins on April 8th, right?
Correct.
One could think that when the bump happens, people may start thinking, hey, we may be listened to, right? That's a natural assumption.
Sure.
So between 4/8, so April 8, 2016, going up to April 19, 2016, when the bump happens, they're regularly communicating, right?
Yes.
There's calls on April 11th, right?
Okay.
April 12th,
Okay.
April 13th, right?
If you're saying so, I don't have the list in front of me.
You're the
I don't have it in
lead.
front of me.
All right. But you know that they were regularly communicating.
Correct.
Now, prior to April 8th, we don't have any call detail records. Let me rephrase that. You have call detail records from years prior, but for the beginning part, let's say the start to April of 2016. You didn't have call detail records for Catherine McBanois or anybody else.
What do you mean call detail records?
Stuff from the cell phone provider saying, hey, these are all the communications somebody's having.
Prior to April?
Just prior to the bump.
I'm not aware of that.
Now, you believe that it's evidence because Catherine didn't herself call the police, right?
Objection.
Overruled.
That's part of the evidence.
Well, let's get into that now. Catherine wasn't bumped, right?
Right.
Nobody went up to her with a flyer making demands, right?
Correct.
Nobody called her. No undercover called her, right? Threatening her.
That's correct.
Nobody messaged her.
No.
Emailed her.
No.
She was never contacted.
By the undercover?
Correct.
No.
So it wouldn't be her position to say, hey, I'm going to call the FBI because somebody else is being harassed. Right?
Can you repeat that question?
We're talking about if it's her position.
Right.
She hasn't been contacted. She isn't being harassed. It's not her position to call the FBI because somebody else is being harassed, right?
I disagree.
Yesterday, the government's 138, they played Call D. And that was the first call post-bump between Charles and Catherine.
Okay.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 3 prior calls to that between Charles and Donna.
Correct.
Charles never said to Catherine, don't talk in the apartment.
No, he did not.
But he did say it to Donna.
Correct.
Post-bump, Charles and Donna are talking. The first thing Charles says is, don't talk in the apartment. Right?
That's not the first thing he said, no.
It's one of the things that he says in those calls, right?
It is one of the things, yes.
You believe that he's involved in a conspiracy with his mother and also Catherine, right?
Correct.
Now, the meaning of that statement would be, hey, you could say something that could get both of us in trouble, right?
Correct.
But he doesn't say it to Catherine, right?
Correct.
Now, moving forward now, do you have your spreadsheet up there?
Of the calls?
That's fine if you do.
The calls?
Yeah.
Yes.
We next go to call E, right?
Okay.
Still in government's 130 for the record, and now it's call E, April 19, 2016. And again, I'm not going to play it again for this jury. We've gone through it. We went through all that yesterday. Charles says to Catherine, if it involves you, I'll keep you in the loop, right?
Yes.
Then we move forward to Dolce Vita, April 20th, 2016, right?
Yes.
There's a meeting. It's a public restaurant, right?
Correct.
There's people there.
There's a couple of people there, yes.
In fact, one of your agents was able to walk up and sit down pretty close to you.
A couple tables away.
There's servers in there.
There are.
There's people around working at the establishment.
Yes.
Much different scenario, much different setting. Much different setting than the meeting that he had with his mother, Donna, right?
That particular point is a little bit different.
Do we need to pull up the picture?
No. I remember the meeting with Donna.
You know the picture that we're talking about where Charles and Donna are out by the water
I took
at a
it.
picnic table, completely away from everybody else.
Yes.
Much different setting, right?
Different setting, yes.
Moving forward now to call K. Still in government's 138. Sigfredo Garcia says to Catherine McBanois, the less you know. Right?
Yes, I believe that's
You remember that.
I believe that's correct, yes.
So at this point, you believe the information has gone from Donna Adelson to Charles Adelson to Catherine to Sigfredo Garcia, right?
Correct.
So Sigfredo Garcia now has the information. He knows the information, right?
What information are you referring to?
Well, the
bump?
correct.
Yes.
It's made its way around to him.
Correct.
And from his statement, the less you know, that would indicate that he knows something, right?
Or the less you know in the future too. Could mean either way.
You agreed to look at this objectively, right?
Right, that's what
So-
I'm doing.
Let's look at it objectively. There's something that he won't let her know, right?
Sure.
Now, he also sounds very angry in that phone call, doesn't he?
I believe so, yes.
At one point in time, he says, somebody can soothe you.
Somebody can what?
Soothe you.
I don't remember that.
You agree with me, though, that he seemed angry.
Yes.
But you don't know why he was angry, did you?
Angry because it's everything that's going on, it seemed like.
Objection, Judge, the calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Or maybe it was a situation that he was upset that Charles Adelson was again contacting Catherine.
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
It's possible.
Now, as the calls progress between Charles Adelson and Donna Adelson, you would agree with me that Charles Adelson increasingly is more confident that it's law enforcement, right?
I don't agree with that statement.
Have you listened to call 1557?
Yes, I have.
Let's go Sanford, please.
Good to go, Your Honor? Agent, we're going to pause right now because that break reminded me of something that I needed to go back to. We're going to go back to the cash deposits, working in the nightclubs, okay?
Okay.
I want to give you a reference. I want to be fair here. So during your investigation, at some point you receive Charles Adelson's iCloud data, right?
I did not receive it, and I believe it was later in the investigation when we received it.
Eventually you get it and review it, right?
I reviewed some of it, not all of it.
Now when you say some of it, you're saying that you haven't gone through the 300,000 events that are in his iCloud data.
That's correct. I did not. Somebody else did.
So you don't know if there are text messages in there talking about Catherine quitting her job, working at a nightclub in April of 2015. You don't know that.
I haven't seen that text. I've seen a lot of them, but I don't remember that text.
But again, you haven't gone through every single one.
No,
It's a lot, right?
it is.
But again, with this evidence of cash potentially coming from Secreto Garcia, coming from the nightclubs, you still maintain, well, it's still off the books cash. It came from the murder, right?
We weren't able to trace that cash back to anything, especially off of her tax returns. It was not there.
It's a Federal Bureau of Investigation, right?
That's correct.
Not the Federal Bureau of Imagination.
Objection,
Sustained.
move to strike.
Jury disregard Mr. DeCoste's comment.
Let's go to call up. You have your spreadsheet?
I do.
That's April 25th, 2016. Charles Adelson wants to meet with Catherine Magbanua at the Icon. Remember that from
Yes.
yesterday?
Yes.
You would agree with me that in that call, in your lay opinion, Charles Adelson sounds worried. We gotta meet, right?
Yes.
Catherine Magbanua on the other hand is reluctant. I don't want to drive all the way down there. Right?
Right.
Not worried.
Not worried? Is that a question?
Yes.
I believe she was worried because she was asking if he could talk through the WhatsApp in that particular call.
Now, at this point in time, correct me if I'm wrong, there's already a bunch of media following the death of Dan Markel, right?
At this exact point,
Yes.
I disagree.
There was media out there.
A year prior after it happened, the media had
Speculation.
died down.
Sorry to cut you off. Speculation that the Adelsons were involved, right?
Sure.
Let's go now to call AA. From April 27th, April 27th, 2016, there's a call in between Charles and Donnie. You remember that?
Yes.
Now, at this point, Charles sounds confident, correct?
I don't remember how he sounded, but okay.
Let's go now to call BB, and we'll go with a quote, because I don't want your opinion here on what was meant. Instead, we'll go with what was said. That Charles says to Donna that he's not worried, that he knows who it is.
Okay.
That was said, right?
Sure. Yes.
Starting to believe that it's law enforcement.
I disagree. I can explain if you want.
No. Go now to call DD. Charles, in that call, at the beginning of it, in the first 30 seconds, says that there was a guy looking for Harvey, right?
I'm sorry, repeat that? He said what?
Charles, in the beginning of the phone call, now we're on DD. Do you have your spreadsheet?
I have my spreadsheet, sure.
All right, now at the beginning of that call, he says, a guy called the Adelson Institute looking for Harvey.
I don't recall that.
You would agree with me that within that call that Charles says to Catherine, find out who the fuck it is.
Sure.
To his mother, he knows who it is, right? Yet to Catherine, find out who it is, right?
I'm confused. Repeat that.
So you have a call the same day, April 28, 2016. Charles is speaking to Donna and called BB, and he says, I know who it is, right?
He tells his mother that he knows who it is?
Correct.
Okay.
And then that same day in call DD, he's saying to Catherine, find out, quote, find out who the fuck it is.
Okay, sure.
Did it dawn upon you that Charles immediately knew that it was law enforcement because the information that was presented to him, that Catherine was involved, was wrong, and he immediately knew? Immediately knew.
No, he did not. He was trying to soothe his mother's fears by telling her everything was okay. Every time he talked to her, he tried to just calm her down, and then he turned around with a real panic after that.
That's your opinion, right?
That's what the evidence showed.
Well, he doesn't say that in the phone call saying, hey, I'm just trying to soothe my mother. He doesn't say that.
No,
Does he?
No, but everything surrounding it supports it.
But again, that's your opinion. You believe that's what he's doing, right?
That's what the evidence showed.
But the evidence doesn't say that, though, right? Just to be clear, the evidence doesn't say what I'm trying to do is trying to make sure that my mother's okay.
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Let's go to some more statements that were made and called DD. Catherine in that phone call is frustrated, right?
Yes.
She says, quote, I'm
What
trying...
call? I'm sorry.
DD.
Okay, I thought you said B, as in boy.
Boston accent, sorry, Judge. Catherine says, quote, I'm trying to get whoever is threatening your family and helping you guys out. She says that, right?
Yes.
She doesn't say us, helping us out, right?
Right. She's trying to separate herself.
So the undercover says to Donna, hey, and I can't remember his exact language, my brother up in Broward, they helped you out. But he uses that language, helping you guys out, right?
Sure.
Catherine is referring to it saying, I'm trying to, and she's arguing with Charles Adelson, saying, whoever it is that's threatening your family and helping you guys out, not, this guy's on to us for a murder.
Objection, argument
Overruled.
Correct.
Not helping us out, right?
Right.
She also says that someone is harassing you guys, referring to the Adelson family, right?
Yes, she does.
And using her name,
Yes.
but not harassing us, not harassing me, right?
Correct.
you still believe that she's guilty because she didn't call the FBI because other people were being harassed.
Objection.
Sustained.
Ultimate conclusion.
Who's the one person in all of the wiretaps who talked about calling the FBI?
The one person,
Yep.
Charlie did, Mom did, and Katie did.
Catherine said, you would agree with me that when Charles and Donna are talking about it, it seems staged, right?
Objection. Argumentative.
He's asked his opinion, you can answer. They didn't overrule the objection.
Repeat the
Withdrawn.
question.
Withdrawn. Catherine,
Jury
quote,
disregard the question.
called DD, quote, I'm about to go to the fucking FBI. Catherine said that, right?
Yes,
Now again, it wasn't her family getting harassed, right?
correct,
It was the Adelson family getting harassed.
correct.
Now in that same call, Charles is reluctant to call the phone number for the undercover, right?
Yes,
He wants Catherine to call.
yes,
Your belief is that the two of these are involved in a conspiracy to commit murder, right?
that's correct.
Whether it's tied to a gang or whether it's the FBI. That would mean that Catherine would then have information that could implicate Charles Adelson, right?
She, possibly, yes.
It would be massively risky to say, Catherine, I want you, almost as a representative of this, to go in there and talk to these people, knowing that his butt's on the line.
What's the question? Sorry.
That Catherine could mess up and say something wrong, could implicate him in some way, right?
I'm not sure of the question.
All right, let's back up, and I'll go over it. And this is fine, let me know if it's confusing.
Yes,
Charles was reluctant to call himself.
yes,
Now the reluctance, that could be because he doesn't know whether it's the government or not, right?
there's a lot of reason to be reluctant, but that's one of them, yes.
If he were to contact directly over to Sigfredo Garcia or Luis Rivera, one of them may already be working with the government, wearing a wire, right?
That's correct.
He's got to maintain that distance, right?
That's one reason.
Now, what we're talking about is the fact that he wanted Catherine to call.
Okay,
Catherine, you make that phone call.
okay,
Now, your belief is that Catherine was involved in a conspiracy with him, involved in the murder with him, right? Meaning that she would have knowledge
that's what the evidence shows, yes.
of his involvement. She would have knowledge of his involvement.
That's correct.
So meaning when she picks up that phone and makes that phone call, she could say something, do something that could affect him.
Potentially.
Or maybe it's the alternative. Maybe he knew that there was no risk because she knew nothing, right?
I disagree.
You would agree with me that this continues into the next phone calls on April 28th where Charles is saying things, and again, quote, call the fucking number I gave you the other day. And where Catherine says, you call yourself. Right?
Right.
Back at Government's 138, Judge, it's called JJ, where Catherine McBanwa says to Sigfredo Garcia, quote, they're putting my name in this. She says that, right?
Yes.
And again, these are secretive recordings, right?
Yes.
She doesn't say, they're on to us, they know. She doesn't say that, right?
No.
She says, they're putting my name in this.
Yes, that's what she said.
Now I want to call MM. Catherine McBanwa to Charles Adelson. Quote, harass you people, right? She
Yes.
says that, again,
Yes.
not harassing us, harassing you people.
Yes.
But again, it's the government's belief that because she didn't call the police, she must have been involved.
That's part of it.
Going to go now to call PP. Government's 138. Or PP. Now we heard that phone call yesterday. You remember that, right? It's a long phone call.
Yes,
It's about a 25-minute phone call.
yes,
And at one point in the phone call, they referenced something that you knew about already. A fight in between Sigfredo Garcia and Charles Adelson. Confrontation. You remember that, right?
we did not know that at the time, no.
Well, Yindra Velasquez told you about a confrontation.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Yindra Velasquez. When did you meet with Yindra Velasquez? Do you remember?
Well after this. I don't remember the date of it, but it was well after this. We didn't know at the time of the call about it. We learned about it later.
Well, we're talking about it now,
Right,
but at some point during the investigation, you meet with Yindra Velasquez.
yes,
I'll sustain the objection at this point.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn of a confrontation between Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia?
yes.
Objection, relevant.
Your Honor, I can tie it together with this next question.
He's answered the question. Go ahead.
In the call that we heard yesterday, there was reference to that, right?
I don't recall the exact reference.
At the 22-minute mark, they talk about a situation where they had jet skis and how he didn't know the Lexus could drive that fast.
Right.
Did you not tie that together, that was...
It could possibly be something else.
During your investigation, you looked at the call activity detail, right?
Yes,
And there was something that happened on July 1st of 2014, right?
yes,
There was a lot of phone calls from Catherine McBanwa to Sigfredo Garcia.
correct,
Tons of them. And then there's this call from Sigfredo Garcia to Harvey Adelson.
correct.
You've never been able to explain that.
No,
As the calls progress with Don Adelson, it's your belief that it was soothing the mother, but you would agree with me that it goes increasingly soothing, saying positive law enforcement, right?
right.
Now, he never called law enforcement, right?
I assume we're talking Charles Adelson.
Correct.
I see. Okay.
Charles Adelson never called law enforcement.
Correct.
The money was never paid. The money was never paid, right?
Paid to the undercover? No.
Correct. Let's go back to the theory here, to the flow. Charles Adelson is, and you say soothing his mother, saying I'm positive it's law enforcement, telling Catherine McBanwa, find out who it is, right?
Right.
You never hear Catherine McBanwa say to Charles Adelson, it's law enforcement, right? Never hear that.
No.
Who told Charles Adelson
Who told Charles Adelson what?
that it was law enforcement?
And I still don't believe that he thought it was law enforcement.
Let's go a step further. Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia.
Okay.
Federal inmates have what's called core links. You know about that, right?
Have what?
Core links.
No.
The ability to email.
Okay.
In fact, when you met with Luis Rivera, you actually gave him your card and said, hey, email me. You remember that?
I don't recall that, but okay.
You know that they have the ability to be able to email, right?
Sure.
During your investigation, have you reviewed the emails specifically around 5/11/2016 in reference to communications in between Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia?
No.
You would agree with me that at some point in time, Charles becomes almost positive it's law enforcement. It says that to his mother.
I don't think he says law enforcement in general. I think
But he's, to a very high degree, he's positive. And they're relieved,
he's positive he knows what it is.
right? And that days later, in one of the calls that we heard, he then tells Catherine, you know, it's what I thought it was.
Right.
You can't say sitting here, not knowing WhatsApp, FaceTime, or person-to-person communication, that there was not a line of communication set up between either Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia or Charles Adelson and Luis Rivera, can you?
No. Direct line?
And that Charles Adelson was just using Catherine to find out more information of what was going on with the bump because you know what? She's expendable. He can use her without any risk to himself.
I totally disagree.
Let's talk about Charles Adelson. You've listened to a lot of the wiretaps, right?
Yeah, correct.
Within those wiretaps, there's talks of falsifying medical records, right?
There's insinuating circumstances, correct.
Specifically, he says he wants to rewrite a chart changing what type of anesthesia was used.
I don't recall that.
There's conversation about guns. You remember that?
Yes.
That he has fully automatic machine guns.
I don't recall that.
There's talk about steroids.
Yes.
Sustained.
Statement against penal interest, Your Honor?
I beg your pardon?
If it's a hearsay objection, it's statement against penal interest.
It's a relevance objection, if I understood it.
I can tie it up with a few questions, Your Honor.
I've sustained the objection. Move on, Mr. DeCoste.
We did get the answer, the steroids and the guns, right? You did answer that, right?
Yes.
You don't know where he was buying those steroids from, right?
It appeared to be some friends of his.
Well, he wasn't. Have you arrested any of them?
No.
Would that be because you don't know who he was actually getting it from?
No.
No, you don't know, or you do know?
I do not know
All right.
exactly who he got it from.
Now, he was buying these drugs without the use of Catherine McVaniel, right?
That's correct.
He has the ability to commit crimes without Catherine McVaniel, right?
That's correct.
Having a fully automatic machine gun is illegal, right?
It depends.
You can't go up fully automatic?
Yeah, it depends if you have license or not, things like that.
Did you investigate if he has a license?
No.
All right. So, you can't say whether Charles Adelson was buying drugs from the boss, gang member in South Florida, can you?
Yes.
You can say that he wasn't?
Yes, there was no communication with any of the bosses or any of the gang members down in South Florida.
Agent, you've been at the Bureau for 20 years. You'd agree with me that sometimes people commit crimes without using a cell phone, right?
Sometimes, yes.
Before the age of cell phones, there was crime, right?
Yes.
The mob for years was able to communicate through an intricate network.
Yes.
You see it in movies with payphones and stuff like that, right?
Correct.
That they're trying to operate off the grid.
Yes.
So, for your theory, we have to assume that it did all take place over cell phones.
He's talking about buying steroids over the cell phone with people.
But he doesn't talk about where he got it from.
He might be talking to the supplier. That's what it sounded like.
Or he may have gotten it from one of the many Latin kings. Right? You don't know.
I don't know.
And if that were to have happened, he would have a direct communication in between either Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera. Right?
Say that again?
A direct line of communication without the use of Catherine McVaniel, right?
I disagree that he had a direct line of communication.
Sure about that?
That's the cost. That's argument. Ask a question.
Showing you it's been entered into defense 12. Have you seen that before?
Can't see it now.
You've never seen this before.
I can't see what it is.
All right. What's the date?
Oh, yes, that's the one that you showed me earlier in the trial. It's 4/25 of 14.
That I showed you?
Somebody showed me. Yeah, I think it was shown.
And you'd agree with me that this is a question from Catherine McVaniel months before the homicide saying, did Suto call your phone?
Right.
Now, you're not here to interpret what this means, but you would agree with me that at one point in time he says, actually he did.
Yes,
And then there's almost a joking exchange.
correct.
You can't say that there wasn't communication via WhatsApp, other phones, other means in between Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia?
I can't say for 100% sure, no.
But from this, there's a clear belief that Catherine McManua thought Sigfredo Garcia is going to be calling Charles Adelson, right?
Yes, at some point, I believe she thought he would have tried to call her, yes.
And the reason is because he objected to the relationship with Charles Adelson.
That's correct.
He desperately wanted her back.
That's my opinion.
So you have an indication here of communication between the two of them.
I think we've exhausted this, Mr. DeCoste. Move on, please.
Sure. Let's come back to your theory. You have these things, the cash deposits, the paychecks, the car. But it wasn't until Luis Rivera gives you his statement that the theory comes alive and you make the arrest of Catherine, right?
That's when we got the warrant, correct.
Rivera flips, right?
Yes.
Luis Rivera flips.
That's a question, yes.
Now, he's a violent gang leader, right?
He has a criminal history, yes. And was a gang leader, yes.
Violent gang leader.
Sure.
Yeah, ask and answer.
Overruled.
You arrested him for murder, right?
Yes,
Violent. He's a gang leader, right?
correct.
I sustain the objection at this point. We've done it several times.
You go down to South Florida. You have a team of law enforcement with you, right?
When?
For the arrest of Catherine.
There's agents in Miami who assisted me, yes. I did not take a team with me.
Investigator Isom was with you?
Yes,
There were other law enforcement there?
from Miami, correct.
All right. When I'm saying take, I'm saying to the location where you arrested Catherine McManus.
Yes, that's correct.
You were in multiple cars,
Yes.
right? Guns were out.
They were doing surveillance on her, yes.
Scared her so much she urinated herself.
I'm not aware of that.
You were present with Isom, right?
When? At the arrest?
Correct.
Yes.
And the reason why you guys went from up here down to South Florida was because you wanted her to cooperate.
That's correct.
Objection.
Overruled.
You have this big show of force, slap the cuffs on her, and want to talk to her, right?
That is not the reason for the big show of force.
Federal Bureau of Investigation, right?
Exactly.
Not the Federal Bureau of Intimidation.
Judge.
Mr. DeCoste. Jury disregard Mr. DeCoste's comments. I'm not going to warn you again, Mr. DeCoste. We're going to start having something further than that.
Understood, Your Honor. Let's talk about discovery. You know what discovery is, right?
Yes.
Now, in this case, you have a manifest within the FBI. And let's talk about sort of the inner workings of the FBI. For each case, you have a running manifest of all the reports and all the things that are done, right?
Sure.
Do you agree with that?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Now, the work that's done by the FBI, you then share it with the state attorney's office, right?
Correct.
But the FBI is different than state-level police departments and is different than the state attorney's office in that you can choose, we're not going to provide some things.
I don't know if I agree with that statement.
There's a video of the arrest, right?
Of what arrest? Which arrest are you referring to?
Either of them. Catherine McManus or Sigfredo Garcia?
No, there's no video of the arrest.
One brief moment, Your Honor.
You might.
Let's go to policy, other policy within the FBI. The recordings of interviews. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, the policy for the Federal Bureau of Investigation is that recordings need to be made if it is pertinent, if the person is in custody, or if there is approval, right?
That is not totally correct, no.
What's the policy?
Policy is we are not allowed to record interviews unless we have special permission from the supervisor. And the other policy is if somebody's in our federal custody, then we have to record that interview if they're in federal custody.
So your testimony is that if somebody is in custody, but not in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that you don't have to record it?
It's if they're in custody, if they're in our custody, that is the policy.
You would agree with me that you've met with many people on this case, many inmates, and you've recorded a lot of those.
Correct.
One brief moment, Your Honor. Just to make sure I have that correct, if they're in your custody, or if you have special approval.
Yes.
That's policy, that's not law, right?
Correct.
Now, if you're not doing a recording, though, you write a report.
Yes.
That's also policy.
We write reports for interviews that we do. Yes.
I just want to make sure that I got it down, and I'm not trying to be repetitive here. You record interviews if you have special permission, or if the person is in DOJ custody, right? Department of Justice custody.
Correct.
Otherwise, if you meet with somebody, you're going to write a report
That's correct.
called the 302.
Yes.
Now, step aside for a second. When it comes to recordings, you don't have to let somebody know that you're recording them. You can do it secretively.
That's correct.
Now, the Tallahassee Police Department, they have their own policy, right?
Correct.
When you met with Dr. Heineke, you remember that name?
Yes.
There was somebody from the Tallahassee Police Department there with you, and they recorded the interview.
That's correct.
Same thing with June Mchinda.
Correct.
On that topic, you never told Miss Mchinda that you were recording her, right?
I did not. No.
Neither did Sherry Bennett.
I don't believe so.
Caridad, Herrera, Cabello, you recorded that, right?
I did not.
Well, the person in the room with you recorded it, right?
That's correct.
Also, Francis McBanwell. That was recorded as well, too. Not by you, but it was recorded.
That's correct. That was in the police department, I believe.
You would agree with me that the most accurate reflection of what somebody said would be a recording, right?
Sometimes, yes.
Your reports aren't word for word like the court reporter here.
No, they're not.
It's giving your version of what was said.
It's my report, correct.
Now, yesterday, Mr. Zengane asked you a question, and you did answer it, whether you believe Luis Rivera. And you said, yes. Right?
Yes.
In the times that you met with Luis Rivera, let's go with September 30th and October 4th. One is recorded, one is not. Before you started, you told him, or someone in the room, you got to tell the truth and the whole truth, right?
Yes.
Did he ever tell you about hoods and masks?
Not that I recall.
Did he ever tell you about a third trip to Tallahassee?
No.
Whole truth and nothing but the truth, right?
Yes.
Did he explain to you how that third trip was between Sigfredo Garcia and King Anthony?
No.
And King Anthony, you know, is Anthony Ortiz,
Correct.
who is now deceased,
Yes.
which, for Luis Rivera, would be convenient for him to bring up that name, right?
I don't know what's convenient for him, no.
Let's go through the dates of when you met with Luis Rivera. May 27, 2016, he's incarcerated. You and Investigator Isom meet with him. It's recorded.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That sounds correct. I don't remember the date exactly.
Same thing on June 21st.
We went to the prison and talked to him on June 21st?
Correct.
Okay.
2016.
Okay.
Sometime in August or September, he makes a decision, I'm going to cooperate. Right?
I'm not aware of the date, no.
Well, eventually on September 30th of 2016, you go in there to get his statement,
That's correct.
to get his proffer, as you call it,
Yes.
so that he can get a deal. Right?
I don't know why he was doing it, but that's between him and the state attorney's office.
He's incarcerated at
Yes.
the time, so he's in custody.
Correct.
You're on the case.
Yes.
He's in custody in Jefferson County, right?
I believe so, yes.
Right next door.
County over, yes.
No FBI recording of this meeting.
No, we don't record proffers.
You didn't say that a moment ago, though. You said we record if somebody is in custody or if we have special permission.
In federal custody.
Well, you're on the case, right?
Yes.
You took part in the investigation in his arrest, right?
He's in state custody. It was not a federal warrant, not a federal facility.
I got it. So yesterday you said something along the lines of that this office, the state attorney's office, told you not to record it?
Yes, it was their decision.
You don't work for them, right?
No,
You work for the federal government.
correct.
Your policy doesn't say, well, if the Leon County State Attorney's Office says otherwise, then we, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, will act accordingly.
My policy says I could not record that because it's not in federal custody.
All right. But you could have gotten special permission.
I could have gone back and got special permission, sure, but it was their proffer.
Now, after this conversation with Luis Rivera, you all get into a van and you go around Tallahassee, right?
Correct.
And in that van, Investigator Isom had a camera.
Yes,
And that van ride was right after the meeting, right?
correct.
Could have used that camera to record the meeting.
Could he have physically used it?
Yeah.
Possibly.
All right. Tallahassee Police Department has their own policy on recordings, as we talked about a moment ago with all those other witnesses. They can record whenever they want.
Sure.
So, in DOJ custody, recording, special permission recording, otherwise report. Right?
Right.
Well, you never did a 302. You never did a report of your meeting with Luis Rivera.
Because Investigator Isom did.
That's not what your policy says, though.
We don't duplicate reports. The policy is that it is documented, and Investigator Isom documented it. So I would not do a separate documentation on the exact same interview.
You remember a guy by the name of Shooty, right?
Vaguely, yes.
Last name Varela, right?
Yes.
He was in custody, right?
Right.
In a state prison, right?
Yes.
And on May 31st, 2016 and June 29, 2016, you and Investigator Isom went and met with him.
Correct.
And you have a DOJ recording of those investigations, right? Of those interviews.
A DOJ recording?
A hawk video, as they call it.
Yes, I have a recording of that. At the request of the state attorney's office, yes.
Are you aware if Shooty has testified in this trial? If you're aware?
I don't know who would testify in this trial.
You record two of the meetings with Shooty,
No, I
but you
did
don't
not.
record the meeting
I did not record
or
two
do a
of the-
report.
I did not record two of the meetings with Shooty. Only one of them. The other one I did a report.
Can you name one inmate, in this case, be it either federal or state custody, one inmate through this entire investigation, besides Luis Rivera, that was not recorded? Just one.
I didn't record any other ones. That's the only one I recorded. I recorded none of them.
Or maybe it was recorded, and it's just not being provided to us.
That is incorrect.
Judge, that's argumentative. Move to strike.
It's not a question of this witness anyway. Jury disregard the question.
You would agree with me that if there is evidence that Luis Rivera gave an inconsistent statement on 9/30, inconsistent to his other statements, that would undercut his credibility, which could undercut your theory.
Absolutely, and I would bring that forward.
And what you want to see happen is this theory, right?
No, I want to see the case resolved with the truth.
Let's talk about cell activity, cell phone activity. And we're talking about 2014, not 2016. You know who Sergeant Corbett is. You said it earlier in the cross, right?
Yes,
Now, during the course of your work on this case, you put together some reports about the information that he was giving you about the cell phone activity, right?
correct.
Now, this wasn't as detailed as the work that Sergeant Corbett has done. It was more simple. You know, this person contacted this person on that day, right?
Correct.
You did one report on date of entry, June 20th, 2016. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
And that talked about May and June of 2014.
Yes, that sounds correct.
And again, it laid out so-and-so called so-and-so, this person called that person, and then there was some, but again, very simple, cell phone location information.
Okay, yes.
You also do another report dated, and I'm not going to talk about the contents of the report, but dated February 8th of 2016. And that talked about, and if you have it there, feel free to reference it, and that talked about July of 2014, right?
Yes, it did.
This discovery was provided over to the state attorney's office, right?
Yes.
And you, being a tenured investigator and having worked on these state cases before, you know that once they get the stuff, that they give it over to defense counsel.
Yes.
In federal court, it's a little bit different, right? A little bit more constrained.
It's about generally the same.
But in state court, all that information is given over.
Okay.
So we have reports detailing activity for June and July, and these reports are written and completed before the prosecution of Luis Rivera really gets going, right?
I believe so, yes.
To make sure that we have the dates here, you do these reports, date of entry, February 8th, 2016, June 20th, 2016, and then in September of that year, then Luis Rivera sits down with you for the meeting that we know is unrecorded.
Yes.
You can't say that Luis Rivera wasn't just regurgitating the theory and the facts that you guys had, right?
Oh, absolutely. I can. Yeah, he wasn't regurgitating that. He was coming out of his memory.
Let's go to Anthony Ortiz. Never investigated him, right?
Investigating him how?
Did you ever meet with him?
No.
Did you ever pull his cell phone records?
I believe they did.
Again, Luis Rivera says that King Anthony went up to came up here in relation to the Markel murder.
I'm not aware of that.
Because Luis Rivera didn't tell you, right?
No, he didn't.
Let's talk about Juan Marcos Vega. You're squinting.
I don't know who that is.
You remember me bringing up that name before, though, right?
When? In the
Would it
deposition?
refresh your recollection? Take a look at the depot.
Is it in the depot or today? I'm trying
Depot.
to ask you. Yes, in the depot. Okay.
Yeah. My belief is that you have no information about Juan Marcos Vega.
That's true.
Are you aware that Juan Marcos Vega was a co-defendant on Luis Rivera's federal Rico case?
Okay.
If you know.
I don't know.
Now, the work on this case was a joint effort between yourself, the Leon County State Attorney's Office, and the Tallahassee Police Department, right?
Correct.
It wasn't something that somebody was going to run off and do one part and you were going to do another and nobody would communicate, right?
Not that we wouldn't communicate, but we did do separate aspects of the investigation, yes.
Do you know the saying with big organizations, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing?
I know the saying.
Was it like that?
No.
But you have no idea who Juan Marcos Vega is.
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
Let's talk about Luis Rivera now. In your many reports, you have different addresses for Luis Rivera, right?
Different residential addresses?
Yes.
Yes.
One of them that you have is 1805 Normandy Drive, apartment 3, right?
Correct.
And you believe that to be one of his addresses.
Correct.
During your investigation of the case and Luis Rivera, did you look at his financial records?
We tried to, yes. Oh, his bank records?
His Chase records?
Yes.
Agent, I'm showing you what comes from Government's 144, the pre-marked, Defense 23 and 24. You know what those are, right?
Appear to be Chase bank records from Mr. Rivera.
And you know that because, again, you reviewed and investigated his financial activities.
That's correct.
And those fairly and accurately depict what you saw in his financial records, right?
I believe so. It's been a long time since I looked at them.
Move in, what's been pre-marked is 23 and 24. Again, it comes from government's 144.
Is there objection?
No, sir, not other than my general objections.
All right. I admit 23 and 24 for Magbanua.
Agent, I see you looking at it, trying to figure out what I'm going to ask you. It's real simple. What was the address on his bank statements?
Oh, I didn't look at the address, but it is Normandy Drive, 1805 Normandy Drive.
And this is around the June trip?
Yes, May 22nd and June 20th.
So the address of 1805 Normandy Drive, May 22nd, 2014 through June 20th, 2014.
Yes,
All right, now I'm showing Magbanua 24. Same address?
yes,
Around the time of the homicide.
correct.
I want to talk to you about photo lineups now. Talked about Chandra Knowles yesterday. The photo lineups that you and Investigator Eisen did with them. Do you remember those? Did you need me to show them to you?
Yes, I remember.
Now, your testimony yesterday is the reason why you did it is that you want to be sure, right?
Yes,
That you must, quote, must be objective. Right?
who said must be objective?
You did. You remember that?
No, I didn't.
Do you disagree that you must be objective?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so you show them a photo lineup for the purpose of identifying Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia, right?
Sure.
Luis Rivera says, or let me just go right to it. Did you ever show a photo lineup to Luis Rivera of Wendy Adelson?
No, we did not.
Luis Rivera gives you testimony saying, I saw her the day before the homicide at the home on Trescott, Dan Markel's home.
Correct.
You remember that?
Correct.
And he says that he sees her in between 9 and noon, right?
Right.
Says that he makes eye contact, that he's positive that's her.
Correct.
Never do a photo lineup, though.
No, he'd apparently already seen a photo of her.
I'm sorry?
He had already seen a photo of her.
During the course of your investigation, you learn of several phone numbers that belong to Luis Rivera, right?
Yes.
Now, do you have your 302s in front of you?
Of which 302?
Date of entry, February 23rd, 2016.
Was it of who?
Would it help you to remember taking a look at it?
Sure.
Sorry, Mr. Dumas, what's the date?
February 23rd, 2016. Take a look at it. Let me know if that helps.
Okay.
Do you have that with you?
I don't think I do. It's just the after records.
You can do me a favor, because I'm going to ask you questions off that. Can you write down in your notes the phone numbers for Luis Rivera?
Sure.
Just hold on to the document.
I needed to ask a question.
You can hold on to the document. You can proceed, Mr. DeCoste. Well,
Okay. Yeah, we'll wait.
we're due for a break. We'll take 10 minutes. Make a copy of the document for him. We'll take 10 minutes.
No.
Do you want me to write them
I'll
down?
make a copy of it.
Sorry. Tim. No.